What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Check this out, y'all. This is great. The Supreme Court is absolutely coming through for the Trump administration. But hang on, you might think, oh, well, it's a conservative majority. They're just Trump's shill. They're shilling for Trump. No, that's not what it is. They are ruling in favor of the administration because the administration is doing everything it can under the Constitution. Everything it's doing is constitutionally authorized, and the Supreme Court is absolutely finding that out. Yes, the Alien Enemies Act is absolutely lawful under the Constitution, the Supreme Court says. However, there is a little bit of caveat to that. They're going to have to go through a due process hearing to make sure that they're gang members before they are deported. But, at this point, I really don't care. That's a huge win for the Trump administration. They lifted Judge Boasberg's order, restricting these deportation flights. Those are going to resume, folks. But this is great. This is absolutely great. But that's not the story that we're covering today. Check this out. U.S. Supreme Court's right-wing majority sides with Trump on fired federal workers. So once again, like I said, these cases are all starting to hit the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is batting them down one after another after another. This is a case of, I think, 16,000 employees, probationary employees. So what does that mean? This is very, very good news for all those other cases with all the other federal workers that are getting fired. That means the Supreme Court is probably going to side with the administration, and these people are going to be fired outright. The executive branch is in charge of the executive branch the Supreme Court finds. That's what the headline should be. Absolutely. Let's get into it, though. A coalition of nonprofits and unions representing federal workers said Tuesday that it would remain unwavering in fighting to protect thousands of civil servants who were fired by the Trump administration after the U.S. Supreme Court sided with the White House in a case regarding the mass dismissal of 16,000 people from various agencies. In the 7-2 ruling, the court did not rule on whether the employees were unlawfully fired, as the American Federation of Government Employees and other plaintiffs argued they were. Instead, the unsigned opinion, whatever that means, approved by every member of the High Court except Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, held that the nonprofit groups that sued President Donald Trump's administration had not demonstrated they suffered injury due to the firing of 16,000 probationary employees, and that the plaintiffs did not have legal standing to sue and try to pause the firings. So once again, that speaks to these nationwide injunctions, folks, that the Supreme Court is looking at these cases like, why is there an injunction on this? This is nonsense. Like stopping all Trump from firing anybody? Seriously? So, yeah, they are not suffering any damage from these people getting fired. And that's what they were suing over, folks. Yeah. I love how the corporate press has to throw in there, oh, well, they didn't fire, they didn't say it because Trump did it illegally. Trump fired the people in. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's not what the court case was about. It's like, what does the corporate press think this day and age, by the way? Like, sure, there are other cases where that's the claim, that Trump fired them illegally, but not this one. And once again, once that gets to the Supreme Court, they're going to be like, are you kidding me? Fired illegally? No, they're probationary. Yeah. If there needs to be a reduction in workforce and the executive branch decides that they need to reduce their force because they can't afford to pay these people, I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do about that. He's not just retaliating on these people. He doesn't know any of these people. Right? It's ridiculous for these people to come in with some of these lawsuits. And then the fact that the federal circuit is siding with the plaintiffs in a lot of these cases, imposing nationwide injunctions on firing federal employees. It's like, it's getting out of hand, if you will. It's just getting ridiculous. But let's keep going. The majority on the court sided with, I don't understand. There must be a typo somewhere. On the majority on the court sided with Trump's administration whatever that's supposed to mean. Yeah, that's confusing. Which had argued that a lower court judge, Senior Judge William Alsup, in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California, had overreached by ordering the reinstatement of people who had been fired from 6 federal agencies, including the Pentagon, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Treasury. AFGE and other plaintiffs, including the Main Street Alliance and the American Public Health Association, suggested that the technical ruling, which will stand while the case regarding the probationary employees moves forward, does not change the fact that thousands of public service employees were unlawfully fired in an effort to cripple federal agencies and their crucial programs that serve millions of Americans every day. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, look, we've got way too many federal employees, guys. You can't get this through your head for some reason. Well, the Supreme Court is going to pound it through your head, as a matter of fact. Today's order by the U.S. Supreme Court is deeply disappointing, but is only a momentary pause in our efforts to enforce the trial court's orders and hold the federal government accountable, said the coalition. Despite this setback, our coalition remains unwavering in fighting for these workers who were wronged by the administration and in protecting the freedoms of the American people. The battle is far from over. I'm sorry. No, the battle, at least this battle, is over. That is it. You cannot go higher than the Supreme Court. I am sorry about that. I hate to break it to these people, but, that's it. That case is dead now, as a matter of fact, aside from that other part that they were talking about. But, as far as that section of the case, yeah, it's gone. Sorry. That's it. The Supreme Court is where the buck stops, as a matter of fact. The plaintiffs argue that the Trump administration not only acted outside its authority by dismissing 16,000 federal workers, but based the firings on false claims by Charles Ezell, acting director of Office of Personnel Management. No, as a matter of fact, no, I'm sorry. You can't just say that, that was illegal and think that the Supreme Court is going to be like, you know what? I think you're right. No, I'm sorry. That's just not how the law works. Donald Trump is the executive of the executive branch. He is the top guy. He absolutely has the authority to fire probationary employees. There's no obligation of the federal government to keep around probationary employees. At any time they can be fired. They don't have the same protections that vested federal employees have, as a matter of fact. They just don't. That's why they're probationary employees. They said Ezell ordered the termination of the probationary employees in a template letter that falsely claimed they were being fired for poor performance. Federal employees are protected from at-will firings, and their supervisors must have a complaint about performance or misconduct to immediately dismiss them. Many of the workers who learned they had been fired last month had not been at their job long enough to receive any performance reviews or had only received positive feedback about their work. In this earlier ruling last month, Alsup wrote that while each federal agency has the statutory authority to hire and fire its employees, even at scale, subject to certain safeguards, OPM does not have that authority. Yet that is what happened here, en masse, said Alsup. The conservative Supreme Court stepped in and used a technical excuse to let Trump have his way. I don't know whose statement that is. They never said, by the way. The plaintiffs said in their lawsuit that other recent court rulings ordering the administration to reinstate fired employees bolstered their view that the dismissals were illegal. Last week, another federal judge in Maryland ordered the reinstatement of federal workers in 19 states and the District of Columbia. The coalition also denounced the government's claim that calling the workers back after terminating their employment would be erroneous. Yeah, sure would, wouldn't it? The scale of the task is simply a reflection of the scale of the government's own unlawful action, and it's a move, fast and break things, ethos, the plaintiffs wrote. I don't know why they decide to word things the way they do, because it comes off confusing sometimes. They could have worded that way different. But accepting the government's argument would mean that it can act lawlessly as long as it acts quickly and destructively enough that resorting to the status quo would be an enormous task. That is not and cannot be the law. As a matter of fact, it is, and yes, it can. The administration's argument was reminiscent of its claims in another case that the Supreme Court ruled on Monday, that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland man who was expelled from the country by immigration officials and sent to El Salvador's prison system despite having no criminal record. Like, does that matter? No, it doesn't. It does not matter if he had a criminal record or not. He was in the country illegally. And I don't care. You can bring all the excuses that you want to. Oh, he was authorized to work in the United States. He still came into this country illegally. And he was still allegedly an MS-13 gang member. That was testimony from a government informant, as a matter of fact. So the judge decided that, yes, we take their word for it. He is an MS-13 gang member. Right. And what's so funny about this is the corporate press, they try to use this, but there were credible claims that, of retaliation by these gangs in El Salvador if he was deported back to El Salvador. Well, you know what? One thing right off the top, he doesn't have to worry about that anymore because he's sitting in prison. But secondly, how do we believe you? How can a judge say that's a credible claim? They can't, as a matter of fact. And I went over this with Grok. And once again, I had to go through several times and tell Grok, no, that's not credible. I kept saying, so we just take his word for it. Because Grok kept telling me that, yes, it's a credible claim. That he said that he would suffer damage from the gangs or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, so the court just took his word for it. Finally, Grok admitted, yes, the court just took his testimony as the truth. So he could have just made all that stuff up. So are we to believe these people? Because they were told by the Biden administration to say that you fear for your life from persecution from gangs or from whatever, from your government in whatever home country that you come from. They are told to tell the government that so they can get asylum in the United States. And once they get asylum, they're handed a job and a debit card with thousands of dollars and blah, 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 a hotel if they don't have anywhere to stay, and the list goes on. And once again, this was one of those unaccompanied minors that just showed up at our border. And then he comes in, he gets accused of being a gang. I'm sorry, at that point. Like, it doesn't matter if you had a criminal record or not. Who cares? These people have to go. They came in illegally. If you want to come into this country, if you go to a port of entry and claim you want asylum, right? But the asylum doesn't make any sense either because he traveled here by foot. So he came through several other countries before he got to the United States. Mexico, as a matter of fact, will take in asylum seekers. So why didn't he stop in Mexico? That's what a lot of people don't get about this. You got all these people coming from all over the world. They get to our border and claim asylum. Well, you know what? You got Brazil you could have stopped in. You've got all these other countries, right? Because they fly to South America. Countries that don't require a passport to enter their country. They'll just let you come in. They don't really care. Right? They fly to those countries and then make their way by foot or by car, by boat, by bus, by whatever means to the United States. We know what, in doing so, if you come into our shores and then claim asylum, you just pass through several countries that you could have stayed in. You could have claimed asylum. They would have took you in. Blah, 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 blah. That's why we don't believe these people. That's why I don't believe these people. They pass up several countries that they could have stayed in. So, I'm sorry. I don't care at this point. You deserve to be deported. That's it. You deserve to be deported. Yeah, despite having no criminal record and having proven to a judge earlier that he could face persecution and torture in El Salvador. No, I'm sorry. Once again, like I said earlier, that there was no proof at all. They just took his word for it. White House officials have claimed in recent days they have no way of bringing Abrego Garcia back to the U.S. as a lower court judge demanded. On Monday, Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts temporarily blocked District Judge Paula Zenas DeSantis' order demanding that he be returned. On Tuesday, Rep. Teresa Leger Fernandez said that regarding the fired workers, the conservative Supreme Court stepped in and used a technical excuse to let Trump have his way. Yes, they did. But you know what? Yeah, it's all on the up and up with the law, how the law works in this country. These people are nuts, y'all. They really are. Like, if the executive of the executive branch does not have the authority to control the executive branch, who does? I would ask all of these people. Who is in control of the executive branch? If not Donald Trump, if not the President of the United States. Who is in control? Like, they don't have an answer for this, because they might say Donald Trump. Well, then hang on. That means he has every lawful right to fire anybody. Just about, like, given a good enough reason, right? Whether it's reduction in force, whether it's poor performance, it doesn't really matter. As long as the reason is legitimate, then he has the right to fire these people. If they have too many people, like, once again, reduction in force, because the federal government is being funded in a deficit. So literally, they could fire everybody because they don't have the money to pay them. They have to print money to pay their federal employees, which is absurd. That takes away your buying power. And these same people are arguing for expanded government funded in a deficit are the same people that are railing at the Trump administration for all the tariffs nonsense. Oh, your prices are going to go up. You know what? Printing money from the government also makes the prices go up, essentially, because it takes the buying power down. So the value of the dollar goes down, making the prices go up. That is the main reason for inflation, as a matter of fact. But these people, they don't see, once again, they don't think past the first level, past the surface. They don't think beyond what they got right in front of them. Yes, you start connecting the dots here, your logic breaks down and it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But I think that's all I got on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all of this down in the comment section, about the Supreme Court, about all these federal employees getting fired, what you think is going to happen with the rest of these court cases, because like with the tariffs, it's looking like everything is going how Trump planned. Outright. But y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all trying to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.